After Cain was overcome with sin and killed his brother Abel, God asks a question. Where is your brother, Cain? And Cain said, am I my brother's keeper? Well, yeah, Cain, you are your brother's keeper. And then God asks a second question. What have you done? Cain has been found out. I mean, there's no hiding from God. Some of you think that you can hide things from God. You can't. And then the next thing that God says is really important. God says, listen. Listen. Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Isn't that interesting? God asked Cain to listen for his brother's blood. The staff has just finished reading, excuse me, this book. It's authored by Rob Bell and Don Golden. It's entitled, Jesus Wants to Save Christians. In this book, Rob Bell notes that in the Old Testament, God is spoken of as creator. Excuse me, 6 times. 6 times, that's it. But God is spoken of as the God who brought you out of Egypt 32 times. That's important. It's not that the Israelites didn't appreciate God who created things, they did. They wrote songs and poems about this God. But they recognized that God's greatest identity is as one who delivers people. People who cry out. People who are in trouble. People who are suffering. That's the God that the Israelites had their faith solidly put in. Now God, I think, is asking you the same question that he asked Cain. Can you hear those cries? Do you remember what got God's attention when the Israelites were in Egypt? God shows up to Moses in the burning bush, and he says, I have heard the cries of my people. God listens to the cries. God hears the cries of anyone who cries out. God hears your cries. God has heard the cries of every individual who was struck by any one of those tragedies over this past 10 years, and God has heard the cries of a multitude of others, including you, at all times. And God is asking, just like he asked Cain, can you hear those cries too? I know. There are so many cries. There are so many cries. Sometimes it's easy to be overwhelmed by all of those cries. Sometimes it's so easy to be numb and just simply to turn off and turn away and remove yourself from the pain of others. And sometimes it's very hard to resonate with the cries that are brought to you through digital sound bites or through images on a screen or words on a paper. And sometimes it's really hard to hear cries when you yourself are crying too. But our opportunity today is to remember that this God that we have a relationship with is not only a God who is a great creator, but is a God who is an awesome deliverer. And as we form a relationship with this God asks us to work with him at delivering the pain of others. To that end, I'm going to do something that probably is a no-no to do in most circles for sermons, but I'm going to read from Rob Bell's book. He writes, when we hear the cry of other people, everything changes. You can live anywhere, you can work anywhere, but when you hear the cry, everything changes. Because when you hear the cry, you're with God. When God gets Moses' attention and lays out for him what liberation is going to look like for his people, he tells Moses to go. Listen, then go. The going will take a multitude of forms. It will be movement, action, life. It will involve risk. It will be conversations with people nothing like you. It will probably involve questions and criticisms and perhaps even rejection from people who haven't heard what you have heard. It's all about taking the next step out of Egypt, doing the next right thing, right here, right now, with what God has given us today. And whatever it is, it will not be boring. Tomorrow will not be like today, and it will cost something. It isn't just about trying to save the world. It's about saving ourselves from the kingdom of comfort, from the priority of preservation, from the empire of indifference, from the exile of irrelevance. Jesus wants to save our church. Isn't that something? I think he's right on target. Jesus wants to save our church by inviting us to be a part of his redemptive and delivering work. You see, Jesus doesn't just want us to hear the cries and help people who are crying out to us. That's good. That's important. But there's one additional piece to that whole perspective. It's that by virtue of us listening and doing, we're saving ourselves too. We're not allowing ourselves to be isolated from the pain of others. Because other people's pain, other people's cries, other people's problems are what God invites the church to be a part of. Are you your brother's keeper? Are you your sister's keeper? You are. In Jesus Christ, you are. So listen, then go. Amen. The peace of the Lord be with you always. Thank you. I invite you to share the peace of Christ with those who are near you.